Hi, this is Dina for Splitcoaststampers. In this video, I'd like to share a fun technique for creating the look of stained glass by layering stamps. This technique works best with clear outlined images, so I've chosen this coffee cup, and I'm stamping with a hybrid ink because I know that it's compatible with the markers that I'm going to use later. I'm using a pretty small and simple image, but you can use this technique with larger images too. Just be sure the outlines are clear and the image doesn't have a lot of shading or tiny details like cross-hatching or stippling or those kind of things. The next step is to stamp over the panel with a background stamp that has some kind of either crackle or mosaic pattern to it. So I have a crackle stamp here, and the cling has kind of gone out of the back of it, and that's why I'm working a little bit backwards here with my MISTI. So I have the stamp in the base of my MISTI, and I added a little adhesive runner to stick my panel to the lid. If you have a stamp that has a grid pattern or a honeycomb background, those would work well for this technique. If you don't have any kind of background stamp that will work, I have an alternative for you later in the video. I forgot to mention that I colored in each area of the stamp lightly first before over stamping. That's a really important step, and you can see how helpful it is in finding the edges of the image, and even more so with a more detailed image. I wanted to share a little bit about the markers I'm going to use in case you're not familiar with Chameleon pens. These are alcohol-based markers with a mixing chamber on one end, and when you engage the tip of the marker with the mixing nib, it pushes a colorless toner down into the color nib and gives you the ability to get beautiful full range gradients from the colorless toner all the way back to the original color. Now Chameleon has these color tops which are filled with their full range of colors, so you can blend any combination of colors together. So this is a darker green. So when I blend the darker green with my lighter green marker, I can get a gradient fade from a dark green all the way back to the light green. And I'm not limited to use green with green. I could get a gradient from a pink to a green, or a brown to a green, or a blue to a green. And the possibilities are limitless. So these are the markers that I'm going to be using. So I've trimmed down my panel to the size that I want for my card. And I'm going to begin just by coloring in some of these areas with the lighter green marker. As you color, you want to skip a section or two in between so you end up with a nice even color distribution in the section, not a big blob of dark green or a big blob of light green. I've used the dark green topper, and you can see that as I fill in the sections, the color is getting lighter. And this is really such a time saver for this technique. I can't imagine having to change markers for each of those different shades. So I'll just continue coloring in the individual sections until the full cup is colored in. And I'm using both toppers, the colorless one to get pale shades of green and the dark green to fade back from dark to light. When that is done, I'll move to the next area, my tan lid, and I'm going to fill that in the same way. And finally, I want to add color to the background, and for that I've chosen some warm grays, and I'll do some spaces with the original color of the markers. So I'll have some light gray and some dark gray, and then I'll use the colorless topper to fade from colorless to light gray, and then I'll use the darker gray topper to fade from dark to light. So my image is colored, and here's another optional step for you. I cut two frames here. This one is from cardstock, and this one is from Fun Foam. And I've also cut a piece of acetate to the size of the outside of the frame. So here's that. You could leave the acetate as is and layer it in your frame, or you can emboss it with a folder to give it a little more interest. So I embossed mine, and I decided after the card was done that it made my coloring a little bit hard to see. It is kind of a cool look though, so I might not do it every time, but it is an option for you that I thought I would mention. Here's the completed card, which started as a tent topper card and then sort of evolved from there. That coffee cup is from Impression Obsession, and I used a sentiment from a Jillian Vance design. I mentioned an alternative to stamping a mosaic or crackle pattern, and for that technique, you're going to stamp your image and color the edges like we did before, and then you can print a pattern over the image using your computer and your printer. So I found this background on pixabay.com, and it's linked on our photo tutorial, but you can search for black and white mosaic or honeycomb backgrounds for something else that you like. I set the size of my document to the size of my panel, which was 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I set the margins to 0 and resized the background to cover the panel. When I was ready to print, I set the guides of the printer to the width of the panel and then sent it through, and this is what I ended up with. And from there, the process is the same as I did with the other card. So here is that completed card. And then one more sample with a larger and more detailed image, which was a lot of fun. I hope you'll try this. It's really a fun way to look at your stamps in a different way, and I think the results are stunning. Thank you so much for watching.